Should you pay off your mortgage early or invest your extra cash? See, having a paid off home is a crowning financial achievement for many generations, but does that still hold true today? Would you be better off investing or paying off your mortgage sooner? We'll break that all down in this video. By the way, this is designed to follow the last 6 videos regarding debt and investing. We spent some time talking about the most common debt repayment strategies and creating an easy budget so you don't slide backwards as you pay off your debts. In those videos, I specifically excluded mortgages or real estate debts because I believe that they work slightly differently than consumer debts and high interest debts. Remember though, that it's still the same thing. Interest is the rent you pay for borrowing someone else's money. When you keep your cash in the bank, they don't actually just lock it all up in vaults where Lupin can just get to it. Also, why lock it up when you're already letting inflation steal from you? What they do instead is take the money you put in, they pay you rent in form of interest, and they lend it to other people or businesses at a higher rate. Or perhaps they use that to buy assets that grow in value much faster than the interest that they pay you. See, as long as the rent they pay is less than what they get in return, that's a profitable business. So why don't we follow that analogy too? You too can rent money as long as you can get a higher return investing. That's really what you're doing when you choose not to pay off your debts and invest in lieu, right? The financial experts or econs that are watching this will point out how elementary that is, but I promise you, not everyone gets this. So you may point out that why even publish a video like this if mortgages are like under 2%, 3% right now, maybe if you don't have established credit. So as long as you can earn more than that, it's easy peasy, right? Keep the mortgage for as long as possible and invest the extra cash because you can beat that easily. Now, if you thought that, you are probably younger. I want to introduce you to the Lucretius problem coined by Nassim Taleb. Now, Lucretius said that the fool believes the highest mountain in the world is equal to one that he's observed. I'm not calling you a fool, but Nassim talked about this in terms of risk, but I want you to be open to the idea where you may have not seen it all yet. See, 5-year fixed rates for Canadians are at all-time lows right now. But if I remember correctly, the very first mortgage that I ever dealt with was at 6.5% in 2005 or 2006. That's when I was 13 years old, helping my parents scan documents, sign things that they barely understood. But that's a story for another day. I just want you to look at this on the screen right now. In October of 1981, there were mortgages over 20%. The prime rate was also over 20%. This shows that there are certainly economic environments and periods of time where paying off your mortgage before anything else is an absolute holy grail. And that's why you would hear a lot of older, wiser individuals tell you, pay off your home before anything else. So before you call them a boomer, please understand the environment that they had to deal with. Because in those days, you were getting guaranteed return essentially by paying off your mortgage over 10%. So you'd be stupid not to do that. Again, especially since it's a guaranteed rate of return and it's tax-free. Let's first treat this as a numbers-only decision. I will say that this is probably not how most people will encounter this problem, but let's pretend that you have $400,000 left on your mortgage and you're paying 2% right now. You would pay about $85,000 of interest over the next 20 years. If you had a cool $400,000 laying around and paid off the mortgage completely, that's the maximum profit for that decision, 85 grand roughly. On the other hand, if you invested that same amount of money and continued to pay off your mortgage as scheduled, that 400 grand would be worth significantly more after a 20-year period. See, if your investments returned 7% annually, you would have $1.54 million. Of course, that's not guaranteed, right? But let's look at history. We'll use a 20-year rolling period from January 1935 to July 2021. We would have 799 rolling periods. Now let's look at a balanced portfolio as our stand-in for our investments. We'll use the Canadian Market Index and the Canadian Long-Term Bond Index as our 60-40 split. Of course, you can't really invest in the index directly because there's no fees and so on and no taxes, but let's try to make it a little bit realistic. Let's add a 1.5% total expense ratio to this. In all of the 799 periods, the median ending balance is at $1.6 million. While the worst case, if you had invested right when the dot-com bubble popped in September of 2000 and you held it for 20 years until September of 2020, now you'd be really unlucky because you would have endured the dot-com crash, 9/11, the Great Financial Crisis, and of course the cerveza virus. You would have $823,000, still more than double your original $400,000 investment. So from that perspective, it makes way more sense to invest. Now, I get that most people don't have $400,000 laying around in their pocket, and most of you would be making this consideration based on additional monthly payments towards your mortgage, but I promise you, I'll get to that. However, there are two more points that I want to break down to make this easier. I have to look at a lump sum investment comparison because it's simpler that way. We'll talk about tax considerations and inflation. Let's talk about tax considerations when you're making this decision. Let's meet Mario. Mario has $100,000 left in his mortgage, and a lot of you watching may have amounts owing near this amount. Especially if you are nearing retirement, you may be thinking, is it a good time to pay off all my mortgage now and pay everything off? Very likely, but let's look at the math, right? Let's ignore interest rates for now and just focus on the source of funding. See, unless it's coming from a TFSA, tax-free savings account, it's very likely coming from taxable sources. So let's say Mario already has $100,000 in earnings this year, and he needs all of that for his lifestyle. If he's in Alberta, his net take home is about $76,000. So if he's from Quebec though, his net would be about $71,000 because they pay more. Let's use that as our number. So for him to get an extra $100,000 and pay off his mortgage, what does he need to earn? He needs to be taking home a whopping $304,000. We can even round that down. Let's round it down to 300 grand. So for him to pay the $100,000 mortgage, he needs to withdraw an additional $200,000 from somewhere, whether it's RSPs or his business. Maybe Mario is a business owner who just made a killing this year and he's thinking about maybe it's time to pay off his house. Well, Mario, it's very likely there are other ways to use your capital. Now, before you fire shots at me for making a simplistic comparison, I know that in real life, Mario may be married and he may have some income splitting opportunities. Let's say he only needs to draw an additional 50 and his wife, who also earns 100,000, draws the rest. There may be some tax credits even. Potentially, I'm definitely ignoring some of those. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that the next $100,000, he only needs to pay 35% in taxes. They would still need to pull out $153,000, almost $154,000 somewhere. See, unless the interest savings is more than the $53,000, that move just does not make sense. Not to mention, all the tax liability would be realized today, where the interest cost will be incurred over the future. And we'll talk about that now when we bring up inflation. Next, there's inflation. Inflation is the John Cena of new investors. Most people just can't see it, which is weird, since when I go to the gas station, I can see that gas is now $1.50 per liter. In a high inflation environment, savers just get killed. Your balance may stay the same, but the value of your dollars actually decreases over time. On the other hand, debtors actually end up benefiting from high inflation, since their payments likely stay the same for a longer period of time, but the value of the dollars decrease year in and year out. If you opted for a 25-year mortgage amortization, you would have a total of 300 payments. Payment 1 is worth way more than the value of payment 300. That's hard to conceptualize, but if you live in a home for a long time, assuming that you never refinance or borrow against the equity, the mortgage or the loan payment actually becomes a smaller and smaller portion of your paycheck as time goes on. Let's meet Stan and Jen. They have a combined household income of $100,000 and they just got approved and they just bought their very first home for $450,000 using a 5% down payment. They opted for a 25-year mortgage with a 2.25% rate, which is fixed for 5 years, and they intend to keep it that way every time it renews. Their initial monthly repayment starts at $1,937 every month. That's about 24% of their total income every year. We know that the current rate is super duper low. So let's say every time they renew their mortgage, their rates go up by a full 1%. So in 2026, it goes to 3.25%. 4.25 in 2031, 5.25 in 2036, and finally 6.25% in 2041. When they renew in 2026, they will have a balance of $374,389, and when they renew, their mortgage is at 3.25%. Their new monthly payment is going to be higher at $2,119, but after 3% of annual raises, their household income is now at $115,927. So their mortgage repayment actually takes up 22% of their income instead of the 24% which it's taken up today. In 2031, the same thing happens. They'll have a balance of $302,000. They have 15 years left at a renewal of 4.25%. So their monthly mortgage payment goes up again. Now it's at $2,267. Until the final renewal, their mortgage repayment will then be at $2,429. But at that point, the home payment only accounts for 16% of their household income because again, their salaries have gone up. Now let's look at the net present value of all the payments. Using the same example, all the payments would amount to $667,442 over the 25 years, making the total interest cost $222,840. However, we have to discount those future payments back into today's dollars. Let's say we discounted it at 2%. The total payment is only $519,021, bringing the total borrowing cost down to about $74,421. Now, I use this scenario to show you that even if interest rates go up over time, if you're able to increase your income either through raises or promotions or skill improvements, your home payment should be manageable. Point number 2 is to drive the point home that with inflation, you will actually benefit as a borrower, not as a saver. Now let's compare this scenario in a way that makes sense to 95% of Canadians. Let's say that Stan and Jen are able to put an additional $400 every month and will maintain the same renewal schedule just like before. So if their starting payment is at $1,937, we add $400 to that, their constant mortgage payment over the next 25 years, regardless of what the renewal rate, is at $2,337. If they did this, they would be debt-free after 264 months with a total interest payment of $170,000, a savings of $52,000, and they are mortgage-free 3 full years sooner. If they invest what they used to get the mortgage down over the next 3 years with the same portfolio we looked at earlier and apply the same historical rolling analysis, there would be a total of 1,003 rolling periods, and the median ending balance would be roughly $96,500. So year 22, they pay off the home, and whatever they were paying monthly for the mortgage, they use that to invest every single month without fail until year 25. They'd have $96,500. What if for the whole 25 years, they've allocated the $400 every month into investing regularly instead? The median ending balance of these 739 periods we can look at is $439,000. Now, in both cases, they have their homes paid off by the 25-year window, except choosing to invest results in them being $342,000 richer. So in summary, the math favors investing in most cases. Now, most people see this as an interest-only problem, which it kind of is. But oftentimes, people miss the forest for the trees. We can get so focused on what we pay interest. The common argument is, why would I make the bank rich? Why would I pay them interest? See, when this is really an overall wealth and an overall net worth discussion. By investing the extra cash, they would have a higher net worth. I know that wealth building, though, is not just about math. A big part of wealth building is peace of mind, and I would wager that many of you may amount financial freedom to having the peace of mind to some degree. It's stability, it's choice. So we can be right on the math, but we can be wrong personally and emotionally. So now let's look at the personal aspects to consider when you look at this question. Let's look at the psychological and emotional benefits that you would get from paying off your mortgage, all right? Now, how would you feel if you were mortgage-free today? How would you spend that extra cash flow? I mean, how nice would it be to go on a vacation? Maybe you buy the dream car that you've always put off and you've deprived yourself on, but now you can afford it. If those things move you, then absolutely go after it. But the issue with paying off your mortgage first before investing or accelerating your mortgage instead of investing is that just like debt payments, investing is a habit. It's a muscle that needs to be flexed and built over time. I know because I'm swole. All right. But if you're not used to investing the extra $100, $200, $500 a month, what makes you think that you're going to be comfortable putting down $2,000 a month or whatever the equivalent was to your mortgage payment plus the early interest payment strategy that you were using? See, what will likely happen is that you get this sudden increase of free cash flow and you wouldn't know what to do with it. This may sound like I'm further defending investing or early mortgage payment. Honestly, I'm not. I'm just wanting you to make sure that you're aware that this consideration exists. If you're the type of person that can work really hard to crush out your mortgage in 15 years and you'll use the last 10 years of mortgage freedom to invest, that might work for you. Or you might make other financial moves. You need to be honest with yourself though, right? Like that's all I'm trying to say. There is a psychological advantage to being debt-free and having the freedom and the flexibility. But as I said, investing is a habit. Maybe you're the type of person that wants to go all in. Maybe having a singular focus allows you to execute better. Then that's worth doing. See, it doesn't matter that investing first is a better strategy mathematically. If you want to execute it or do so with consistency, then it has to be a strategy that you actually can adhere to. Otherwise, the math is pointless. The best strategy is the one that you can actually commit to and continuously do over and over and over again. If you're the type of person that will benefit from having debts paid off first, then maybe that's what matters. So if the math doesn't favor paying off your mortgage early, when is the best time to pay off your mortgage? Before I continue, I just want to say this is my own opinion formed by conversations, seeing other people much older than me, and having connections with other investors. But for primary residences, I would suggest getting it done at least 2 years before you retire. This gives you room for a dress rehearsal for your retirement. Now, when I was younger, I was very passionate about dancing. I was a b-boy. I love performance arts. I was lead for a contemporary piece. I was in a collaboration with Alberta Ballet, leotards and all. We would show up to practice wearing the same clothes we were going to perform in. Now, how is that relevant to you, your money, and retirement? Well, think about it. Entering retirement is not a singular event. It's a start of a new chapter of life. We have never really lived that way previously. Most of us only get one shot at it, one rep. Wouldn't you want to take it out for a trial? Wouldn't you want to have a test drive for your retirement? Most people who plan for retirement anticipate being mortgage free and anticipate a lower income, but lower expenses and maybe more time travel. So by doing this early and allowing for a few years where your mortgage is paid off, you can actually test it out if that's what you're actually going to do. It allows you to reduce your restrictions. So you can see if you'll actually travel, right? Whether you'll actually enjoy that or golfing. Now, if your mortgage is paid off, you have a much lower monthly overhead. You would theoretically have more flexibility with taking vacation time or leisurely spending. So give yourself an opportunity to try out retirement. Do your best to reduce your fixed liabilities a few years before so you can have more choice and maybe more cash flow, and understand that you can make those changes while you're still working. This is important because for most people, the decision to retire can't be undone, at least not without major career consequences. So you want to try it while you're still working, while you still have your job. Look at your cash flow, look at your expenses, because you might find yourself in a situation where you find yourself saying, shoot, I'm actually spending a lot more than I thought I would, even if my mortgage is already paid off. It's a lot easier to make those changes a few years before than find out when you're already retired. So where do you sit on this conversation, Hervin? Right? Like that's a question that I get asked. Where do I sit on this topic? Honestly, the answer to this would always vary from person to person to person. But for me, this is how we do it, right? For our rental units, we're really not in a rush to have those paid off. I want the value of appreciation more right now than the cash flow, which is fully taxable to me anyway. So for the next few years, whenever there's enough equity in any of the properties, we would try to refinance that, use the cash as a down payment for the next unit, and I'll try to repeat this as many times as possible until I retire. For my primary residence, it's slightly different. I really am not sure right now. Like, I love the home I'm in right now, but I don't think it's our forever home. And I'm also quite far away from retirement or wanting to walk away from work. I love what I do. So for me, I'm not in a rush to pay it off because I have other things that I'm building to, right? I have other goals when it comes to properties. I want to help my kids and my siblings buy their first home. So I have other priorities when it comes to the free cash. So for clients, I will always do this in a case by case. I haven't met anyone who's mad that they're mortgage free. However, this is a real scenario that's happened recently. I've had to advise a 64-year-old widow that she can't retire, not on the $70,000 in liquid investments that she's got, because she focused on paying off the home over the last few years. So she has a home that's worth a few $100,000 and it's paid off. It'll be tax-free if she sold that, but she just can't imagine parting ways with it. That was a very painful conversation for her and for me, honestly. Your home, even if it's paid off, likely won't be a viable retirement strategy on its own. There has to be a balance between paying off your home and your saving and investing, because unless you really are keen on building up that equity to finally sell it off one day, the issue is even if you did that successfully, you'll still have to find a place to stay. So would you be able to buy a home at a much cheaper price than what you're selling it for? That's a variable, right? I hope that helps. In next week's video, we'll talk about emergency funds, how much you need, how much you need to really save up every month to do so, and what you'll need to do if you're starting from scratch. Until then, stay aware, take control. I love y'all. Bye. Watch the earlier videos here talking about debt and repayment strategies. Watch a full playlist about personal finance here, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. I'm recording this on Thanksgiving Day. I appreciate you.